Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Amy.
We both grew up with dads who drank too much.
So we are both adult children of alcoholics.
And we're here to talk about our experiences using honesty and some pretty dark humour. We'll be chatting to a variety of people affected by alcohol addiction.
Our dads were both called Steve and they're both dead now, which means we can finally have the conversations we've wanted to.
You had to go there already, didn't you?
We've had a lot of experiences between us and we are both really passionate about helping other people.
So let's sit back, relax and join us with Sarah and Amy, Children of Alcoholics podcast.
Today we are lucky enough to be talking to John Taylor. John is a qualified counsellor and accredited families therapist and runs a family service for Turning Point Drug and Alcohol Service in the 3 boroughs of Hammersmith and Fulham, Kensington and Chelsea and Fulham, offering support to people affected by another's addiction. John is a really key member of the Nacoa team as well and has recently produced a film called 1 in 5 around his experiences growing up as the child of an alcoholic and his time in Scotland mainly, isn't it, John?
Yeah, well, Scotland, London, Scotland, Glasgow and London, yeah.
I loved your film.
Yeah, thank you.
It was so brilliant.
Yeah. I was watching a bit of it the other day because I kind of like watch it regularly to get the numbers up. Yeah. I've cut down to watching it, checking it twice an hour.
Liking your posts.
Yeah, as Piers said to me, and make sure you stay on it because it's good for the...
algorithm.
Oh, that's the word. It's great for the algorithm. Stay on it. So, no, but it was great. I mean, obviously it's my story and I wrote it, but... Ibby, I've got to, the way she put it together, the music. I mean, she composed all the music and, and linked everything together. So, yeah, it's obviously a really good story, but the way it was put together and edited was great. It really was, yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the documentary came off the back of your book also called...
Alcohol Stole My Mum.
That's it, Alcohol Stole My Mum. And that's your handle on Instagram as well, I think, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
So you wrote the book and then off the back of that you did the 1 in 5 documentary.
I did. It's a really interesting story, actually. So, so I wrote the book. So I sent a copy to Hillary and Hillary sent me back a really lovely quote for it, saying it's actually on the book, on the first edition, you're a great ambassador and inspiration. And it's funny, I'd known Nacoa for years when I first come into recovery in 2003. So I knew about Nacoa. It was like the name that was a thing, the National Association of Children of Alcoholics. It was like, hold on, I should be involved in that club. So I knew about it. And when I sent this copy, Hillary sent me it back. And it was amazing, and she wrote this email to me. It was just amazing. I mean, I did, for someone like Hillary. So about, 3 or 6 months later, we got to meet for the first time. And we all know Hillary. I mean, I just love Hillary to pieces. I mean, it was amazing. And before we met, I would, like the way I am, I'd watched all her YouTube videos. I was studying the history of Nacoa, and then I met her and all she done was talk about my book, how much she loved my book, some shared with unbelievable stuff with me. And I was blown away by it, and like how it helped her and, this sort of thing about the ambassador, you're great, for all this stuff. And it kind of shocked me. For someone like Hillary to pay that much detail. So when I left her, I started thinking about this thing about being an ambassador. And she was going, you do so much for the children, but Excuse me. But however, as you know, I think you've read the book, obviously. I mean, the book is not really for children, you know. To be fair,
Well, yes. It's a very accurate description of your experience, but there's lots of commonality around those feelings. But yes, you're right. Some of the subject matter and some of the experiences that you had probably would not be appropriate.
It's a book, with child abuse in it. And I know people don't like using that word, but what I went through, was a lot of abuse as a child, through neglect, all sorts of abuse. It's interesting because, there's a monitoring tool called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a really good monitoring tool. And there's 10 of them. And I had 9.5 out of 10. And they say the more ACEs you have, the more chance later in life you're going to have addiction or struggle. I had 9.5. And the half I had was my dad was never in prison, but he was on the run. So that was my half, they never caught him. So the reason I'm saying that was because it showed that, with everything I went through, I had to put it all, I had to be honest, I had to write everything down, So it was an honest sort of story. There has been consequences for me as a person from writing it, which I'll touch on, but I just want to talk about this Hillary. So what happened was afterwards, Hillary, when she said like that, I mean, it was just amazing. We spent, I don't know, we had lunch and spent a couple of hours. It was like I'd known her all my life, I put her in this role. So when I first come into recovery, I had a therapy, psychodynamic therapy, which is looking at your childhood. And something that was that I always done was in any sort of relationships, you'd have a role. So you two today would probably be my sisters or something, to make me feel safe.
Younger sisters.
Yeah, 100% younger sisters, definitely. But you'd be today as a role, this is what I do to make myself feel safe. So you'd be my younger sisters. I feel safe here today. You're here to look after me. So Hillary was my mum. Straight away, she had this sort of thing. She was looking after me, my mum. I never told her at the time because I didn't want her to abandon me. But later on, I told her, and she is like a mother figure to me. But what we done was, after that, she was so amazing. I had this idea that you've called me an ambassador because of this book, but the book's not really for children, yeah? So I had this idea. What about, obviously, because of my work, I know a lot of family services around the UK. What about if we do a 1 in 5 documentary where we go all around the UK, with these services who I've got links with, and let's go to the place where I grew up in Scotland, go to the place I grew up in London, go to Nacoa, visit the Sikh recovery, seeing what, they're doing in the Sikh.
Obviously we kind of always talk about children of alcoholics, and we think of children and young people, but actually you're a child of an alcoholic regardless of how old you are. So I think you're right. You've kind of hit the two. You've done the children and young people with the documentary, but your book is enormously valuable to adult children.
Yeah. And alcoholics, because I think it's important to say, it's like I'm obviously a recovering alcoholic, and it's about the story. I was damaged so much by alcoholism, by my mum's alcohol, and to cope with it, I used the same thing that my mum, that traumatized me so much. And it's really interesting. I was actually doing someone reached out to me. I was doing an interview. There was this girl, she's doing her major. She got in contact because of Jerry, because of seeing and she's writing her dissertation. And she said to me, which was lovely, she said, I wanted to ask you about when you go to the grave with your mum. He said, "What, you know, in the film," and and I said, "What did you think of it?" And he said, "Well, it's so powerful because it's almost like finishing the circle, you know." And that was something I wanted to do, because it's sort of a gratitude for me that I did get sober, and she never made it. And also, I think this sort of gratitude that, because I got sober young and I never got the chance to sort of harm my children the way I was harmed, this is another reason for doing the film, is almost like giving back, you know, even if one kid watches it, which is, you know, it's almost like saying, look, we are hearing you, because we all know no one listens to kids. You know, it's bad enough. Like, I work with adults of families, and they're the forgotten people, but I call children the invisible, because we've got the safeguarding, you know, who are listening to the children, you know, it's so, they are so undercover, you know.
But also they don't know, and certainly my experience was, I couldn't have told you my dad was an alcoholic when I was, you know, a child or indeed a teenager, for multiple reasons. One was because I wasn't entirely sure what the line in the sand was, where you went from, oh, my dad gets drunk quite a lot, to actually putting a label, which, and you know, a scary label at that age, the label of alcoholic is a horrible and quite worrying term to place on somebody. He repeatedly said he wasn't one. So even if I suspected it, he was obviously in total denial, and nobody else was saying it out loud. So, and also I didn't know any differently. So you're absolutely right about being invisible, and it's not always through a deliberate act of secrecy, although we know that lots of children are encouraged not to say a word and, you know, actively told that you can't talk about this. But actually, sometimes we know something's off, but we don't have the language. So we're invisible, not because we aren't feeling it or told not to say anything, but because we don't know any differently.
Yeah, definitely. But there's also shame attached to it, you know, the deep, deep shame that I felt around my mum's drinking. And also, you know, the denial. When I work with families, I always say to try and, like, you know, to make them so, and I'm from both camps as well, because obviously I'm in recovery. So an alcoholic will do anything to protect their illness, you know, and I use the analogy like a parent will protect their child. An alcoholic or someone in addiction will do anything to protect, you know, the addiction. And unfortunately, a lot of that is we'll play games with the kids. And we know that children, they become the carers. And it's right what you say, they don't. Did I know my mum was an alcoholic? I knew she drank too much and all that, but of course I didn't know. You know, it's the interesting thing is, it just reminds me of something that I remember when I got sober. I went up and see my mum, and don't forget, like, as you know in the book, my mum lost everything. She lost her kids, you know, the terrible things that was happening. And I went up and I said to her, look, Mum, I'm sorry. And, you know, I've made, like, kind of like said, look, I've become an alcoholic. You know, I had real empathy for her. And she said to me, it's the only time, she went, well, do you know, I had a little bit of a drink problem. And that was as far as she was prepared to go, you know, God bless her, you know, because it's so, not just the shame of the kids, the shame of the sort of, the shame of the alcoholic as well. It's a shame-based illness, you know.
But then she, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but she had kind of, her dad was an alcoholic, her brother was an alcoholic. It was, you know, you had kind of multi-generational
mum and dad's
addiction
side.
and trauma.
Mum and dad's side, all of it.
Right.
Full house.
It's like generational, isn't it? Almost, yeah.
You know.
But I think shame breeds silence, doesn't it?
100%.
So And I think for me, it was the dirty family secret that we didn't speak about. It would have been disloyal to talk about my dad like that. And then what if I got it wrong? What if he weren't an alcoholic and it was all in my head and I was a drama queen?
Yes.
And we always joke, don't we? Amy and I joke that we're the drama queens. But, you're being dramatic. There's not a problem. I could stop if I wanted to. I'll stop on Monday. You're being a drama queen is what I used to get.
I'm still questioning myself, even because of what happening. I still question, that sort of what you're saying that you've had since a little kid.
Yeah.
Still questioning, And it's funny how you talk about the family. So when I wrote the book, that was another thing that Hillary was so good. When I wrote the book, all my family were supportive of me, When I wrote it, none of them, have anything to do with me anymore. None of them, don't, it's like, and friends as well, a lot of pals, especially in recovery, they're like, and it kind of like talking to Hillary that time, that was another thing that really helped me because she shared some stuff and it's part, I'm sure you've had experiences, it's part, when you talk about this stuff, it is like, and it was too much for them, especially when I wrote about it in such graphic detail in the book. And it was like, you're wonderful, John, you're wonderful. Oh, we're so supportive. Book come out, read it, run for the hills, never see him. And that was hurtful at first. That was really hurtful because what it done, it took me back to that little boy, like I've done something wrong. Is it my fault? What have I done wrong? But actually, now I realise, and it was another thing why talking to Hillary, I've done nothing wrong. I've just been really honest.
People backing away is them not knowing how to address it with you rather than like it's a them problem, not a you problem.
Yeah, it's their shame, isn't it? Well, it's like what you said this there, it's the family secret. What? You want to talk? We keep all that stuff hidden, do you know what I mean?
We only share the good stuff. We don't share the bad stuff.
But it's okay. Look, the two things, my two girls, they're the only ones. They're both really proud of me, and they both, and I've got wonderful relationship. And as you know in the film, that was the thing that I wanted more than anything, is to see my girls grow up. That was the sort of thing, because I kind of like, I was thinking about this, what a year it's been since, like, I know we're here to talk about, the 1 in 5 documentary, which started off, obviously it took us a year to film it, but with I try and work in my sort of spiritual life, like work on a lot of gratitude, because I can go down a route anytime. This is shit, my life, the negative, which is childhood stuff, it's all going to go wrong.
Your inner child
quickly.
speaking.
It's everything. I'm going to get found out. It's all going to go wrong and they won't like me, and all of that. But this year, not just like the obviously you was there for the, for our premiere, which was in the West End, 200 yards from where I grew up. Callum Best, come to the premiere.
And Amy Dixon, lest we forget. Hello.
Yeah, but hold on.
Kind of some big names there, guys.
Callum Best, I've been dining out on that story all year. Callum Best, my friends, come to the premiere. But Callum come on his 43rd birthday. But not just doing that, just like obviously, like we were talking about all the views and like the way it's, happened. But also in October, like two things happened. I celebrated my 21st like AA birthday, 21 years sober. And it, like I said in the book, 21 years ago, I drunk myself into a madhouse. And, that's where my alcoholism took me. I don't want to forget that. And then I celebrated like 18 years as a family therapist, And this is how I try and, we talk about going down. This is how I try and, keep grounded, grateful for what I've got in life. Remember, I don't want to forget where I come from, And then all this sort of, the views and the film and the impact. And, I think the biggest gift I've been given is people wanting to come up to me and talk about their childhood, this sort of the secrets, talk about that. I mean, that's probably the biggest gift.
We did a podcast with George Billinge and had a really similar thing where he is so positive and so grateful. And we were sort of saying that about ourselves. But also, all of us have got this deep mistrust that everything is going to be okay. And you're always waiting for something to go wrong or the phone to ring. I mean, if my phone rang now and it was a number I didn't know, I would just assume that somebody was dead or something disastrous had happened.
Yeah, I do.
Or those things. And it's a really common theme that we can never quite entirely trust our achievements or successes or the stability of our life. But we are grateful for the things that we have.
Yeah, I mean, look, this all comes from and I work a lot on this with clients, especially when we've had, as children, it's PTSD, so much trauma. And one of the sort of consequences of PTSD is dark thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and, I do a lot of meditation and just trying to, but if my anxiety's heightened, I can go anywhere, with the thoughts, with the dark. And that's what it is, this sort of the phone goes, well, they're dead, it's all finished. It's got, the intrusive, the dark thoughts that come. And that's definitely comes from not feeling safe as a kid. I mean, it's a core condition. I know it is. And I hear it all the time with clients, and just to do a bit of meditation. And I like that, I like that where you said mistrust, it's going to be okay. It's almost like checking, am I okay?
It feels like, when you're strapped into a roller coaster.
Yeah. I mean, because I work with family members, it's almost like trying to, because they're on that sort of roller coaster trying to fix the substance misuser. And it's trying to get them off the roller coaster and not, I was doing it today in the group, not engaging with the sort of madness of addiction. Because if you engage with the madness, what happens? You become mad. That's what happens. You're on the roller coaster sitting next to the madness.
The spirals can be mad. I used to come up with ideas where we were going to get my dad really drunk and then we were going to, God,
go on.
But we were going to literally kind of tie him up. Do you remember Doc Cotton chained Nick to a radiator in EastEnders to get him off heroin? Do you remember that storyline? And it would absolutely spiral to the point where we were just going to let him get really drunk and then we were sort of essentially going to kidnap him and put him into rehab and then it would all be okay. Or you would create these scenarios whereby the end result was that your parent would be well and healthy and grateful to you for healing them.
And you'd all skip off into the sunset living happily ever after.
Yeah. And that's really sad because that was never going to happen. And you have to really start to understand addiction, which you can't as a, particularly as a young person, you can't understand that only that person can choose to get better, unless you are in touch with something like Nacoa, which unfortunately I wasn't. And lots of people still aren't, which is why kind of, the film and the book and all the work that we all do is so important. But trying to fix everything and just, that kind of, if I could just do that one thing, what is that one thing that's going to change all of this? Yeah. But that was never any of our jobs. And, I know you talk about that in your book, kind of going to Scotland and sort of, well, how can I make this better in the time I've got there? What can I do?
But that's because don't forget addiction, like like this sort of thing. Addiction is like insanity. Like the definition of insanity is not of sound mind. And when someone's in active addiction, they're not of sound mind. But it's not just the person using that's not of sound mind. The whole family become.
Yeah.
So I was watching something, and he said something. I think he'd done it. Jerry May's talking about kids create fantasies. I'm still creating fantasies now, but that fantasy of, well, we'll get him drunk, we'll kidnap him. It's almost like creating a fantasy that in the end everything will be okay, like it is in the books, like it is in the films, and everyone lived happily ever after. And I still do that today. I can still go into that fantasy. It doesn't go anywhere. I probably sooner or later I can come out of it, but I can go anywhere in my head, with a fantasy, because I'm an adult child, because I've had so much backlog. And a fantasy is almost like, that OCD checking. It's okay, you're safe, that checking, everything's okay, yeah. And that's why I wanted to, write the book, to sort of just to let people know, not just the, the mental health sides, what happens to children who grow up in addiction. I mean, I went down the substance misuse route, but most people, will have mental health issues. It's somewhere along the line, anxiety or depression. I mean, I don't know how many family members I've worked with, thousands throughout like the 18 years, but when I do training, I always say, what percentage of my family members who come into the service have mental health issues at some level? 100%. Because mental health can be suicide, breakdown, or anxiety. Everyone who reaches out to a service has some anxiety or mental health going on.
I've been fortunate in that I've never so far kind of sought help for poor mental health. That's not kind of something I've had to do, but I've definitely suffered with, I would say, kind of mental health issues as a result of it, which I was saying on another podcast with Maya that it's sort of just only really put two and two together, that I used to have the most crippling migraines as a child, which everyone just thought essentially, so I used to, and I mean crippling. And everyone just I used to feel really guilty about them, because everyone just used to say, well, she gets these when she gets overexcited, or highly strung.
Just dismissive.
So I used to get these, which, potentially was because of what was happening. And then I also used to do this thing, which absolutely now with kind of more understanding, definitely kind of OCD tendencies. I would only eat things. And actually, I would only use loo roll in multiples of 5. Yeah, so 5 was my lucky number. I didn't think anything bad would happen if I didn't do it, but I also wouldn't, I'm trying to use my words. I didn't think the world would come crashing down if I used 6 pieces of loo roll, but I absolutely knew I couldn't do that. So it'd be 5, 10, 15, and I would eat things in those things. That wasn't necessarily to control something bad not happening, but it made me very uncomfortable if I didn't do things in multiples of 5.
Because that was safe for you.
Yes.
It felt safe.
I've got no affiliation with the number 5 now.
I used to check windows and doors when I was a child 10 times a night. Upstairs, downstairs, like up and down. Check every single window and door.
I still check the doors.
Everyone in the house 10 times
I live in Surrey
a night.
and we're fine.
I don't. I check the front door. Yeah, I don't. I live on the 3rd floor, so I'm all right with the windows. But yeah, I still.
Yeah.
But also as well, it depending on how I'm feeling. If I'm okay, but maybe I've got some stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
I still struggle with eating. I have very disordered eating. Particularly when I was a teenager, it was not great at all. And I've got mainly a handle on it, but that is my go-to is, again, it's kind of numbers based. So it'll be weight based, but it will also be like a loss of control.
Yeah. I mean, food, more than anything as well, it's, it causes more sort of harm as an addiction, that sort of controlling either undereating or overeating sort of thing, or in the middle, bulimia.
Yeah.
So definitely food, and it's a control thing as well.
Do the other thing that I do, which is just I tap my head 10 times if I think of anything bad.
But that's a therapy.
I'll tap to not jinx it, because I think if I don't tap my head, then that bad thing's going to happen. And my dad used to do it. I used to watch my dad do it. And I don't know if it's learnt behaviour. I don't know if it's an OCD. Don't know what it is. But even now, like my husband will, because I do it really discreetly, and he'll catch me and he'll go, "What are you thinking about?"
And watch,
and
I'll go,
"No, I'm not thinking about anything. What are you talking about?" And he went, "You're tapping your head. I can see you tapping your head under your hair." Like, oh, stop it.
Do you know that's a top trauma therapy, tapping?
Yeah.
Have you heard of tapping?
Tapping, yeah, I have.
Tapping,
yeah.
I mean, so you're probably saving yourself £100 an hour, because you go and see a top therapist.
Tell you what, I'll watch you do it, £50.
Honestly, I know that, because I used to have this therapist, and she went to Kosovo when the war was on to teach, because there was so much trauma. She was a great like doctor, great therapist. But yeah, she was a big, and it helped so much over there. It's a big thing. So there's really probably something, but again, it's a safety sort of thing, isn't it? That's what
I think so. I think it's that. I think I know what I developed when my dad was at the very peak of his addiction, and I moved out, and I think we spoke about it in another podcast about where suddenly when you're in a calm environment, you can feel anxious and on edge because you're worried that calm environment's going to get ripped from underneath you and it's going to go back to chaos. And when I was calm, it didn't feel right. I felt safe, I felt comfortable, and all of a sudden I felt uncomfortable with that. So I developed health anxiety, and I had this like severe, and it was probably the worst 7 years of my life living with health anxiety, because it was just absolutely overwhelmingly horrendous. And it's the only time in my life I've ever felt I can't carry on with life living like this, because it is too overbearing, and it's every day was just living in fear, thinking that I had an illness. And I had therapy, and the therapist associated health anxiety with my way of keeping control of my own body, because I couldn't control my dad. I could control myself, and I could control any tiny little symptom, any kind of twinge, and I'm talking a twitch or any normal bodily function, I would catastrophize and think that I had a tumour or it was cancer. And that was my go-to. I was convinced I had some kind of cancer, and it was horrendous. It was so awful.
That control. It's the same with self-harming, it's that sort of thing. I can control this. So it's that sort of thing.
Just self-sabotage in other ways, don't we?
100%. The body, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the only addiction I've got left is exercise, training, and tea.
And Arsenal.
Oh, no, I can let them go anytime. They're rubbish. But exercise, it's like so there's one day, I mean, he had a saying, Tyson Fury, because he said, I train 6 days a week, and the other day I want to kill myself. And it's like, if I don't train, and it's on a Tuesday, so because I come into London, or maybe a Thursday, if I don't train, I just feel terrible, because it's that sort of endorphins that I used to get probably years from taking drugs, but I do a lot of like training, it's the same sort of thing. And tea as well, caffeine. I can't, that's it. My girls always used to say to me, especially when they were younger, are you having another cup of tea? I used to go, drop me out. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. Let me have something, for Christ's sake, So caffeine and exercise, they leave me something. I've given up everything.
Have you seen, because obviously you've kind of been 18 years working in the field that you work in, have you seen conversations around linking mental health, either as a reason for addiction, but also, you know, like we've all just been talking about how we developed some coping strategies that maybe are slightly unorthodox, multiples of 5 guys. But have you seen understanding and awareness of that and treatment of that change?
Definitely. So when I first come into, I was lucky, I was in one of these posh treatment centres or nut houses, whatever you want to call them, where they did link it, but it's always been separated. And even in the field, it's better now. Even in the addiction world or the mental health, it's almost like they bat each other off, you know. It's the same sort of thing, and they're linking it more now. It's good. I'd say in the last 5 years, it's almost like they do say mental health, depression and addiction. You know, there's more, and I think people coming out and recognising. I mean, you know, I've got no qualms and saying, you know, I obviously drink and drug, you know, I drunk myself insane. You know, you can't say that that's not mental health, because I was mad. You know, you know, there's a link there. It's the same sort of thing. And the thing is that the thing that's is still bad, actually, you know, this sort of thing about families, what they go through. There's still a big sort. When I first come into the field, I always wanted to like, because you're always told, you know, like, I was linked to substance misuse fields and help the substance misuse, but I always wanted to work with the families, always, probably because of, you know, my mum, and I knew that there wasn't a lot of support there. But there's still an ignorance now around services. Why do they need support? Well, you know, they've got the addiction problems. You know, why do they need support? There's still a massive. When I first took this role on, people used to say to me, "You only work with the families." You know, almost like, you know, it's not sexy enough. You know, it's because the substance misusers. So there's still, even today, years and years later, there's still this ignorance, you know, the forgotten people. We are the forgotten people. You know, children and families, you know, there's no funding. I know we lost all that money, but even in substance misuse services, there's no funding, you know, hardly a little bit of funding for families, especially when it's estimated that for everyone active addiction, it affects 7 to 10 people around them, as we know. So
I think the number must be same. If you broadened that out, I went to an event last week around kind of suicide prevention. And their stat was that for every person that takes their own life, 135 people are affected.
Wow.
I know. But I actually think for someone in addiction, whether they're alive or dead, it's probably not dissimilar. If you kind of disseminate it out across children, teachers, you know, behaviour support in schools, GPs, everybody who comes into contact is huge.
I mean, how many times, even if someone famous who you've never met and they kill themselves, it's like, oh, you know, it's like, so of course it's got to, you know, ripple out, hasn't it? It is.
But you're right, the support isn't there. The times that my dad was hospitalised, either directly or indirectly because of his addiction to alcohol, he'd been medically detoxed and patched up or whatever, you know, whether it was a cut head or a blood clot, whatever the issue is, they medically detox him, treat the presenting problem, and then gone. And, you know, I'd kind of go and sit by his bedside and nobody ever,
they still don't,
ever came round
and
said, you know, and at this point, he was, you know, I've seen the hospital notes, he was routinely admitting to drinking 160 units a week. And if he was admitting to drinking 160, you can bet your bottom dollar it was probably 220, because that's just the nature of it. And nobody ever said to me, are you okay? Did you know you can access support? Do you think your dad would benefit from X, Y? Like, it just didn't happen.
So the amount of services I've gone round in the years and years and years, you know, talking from mental health, domestic violence, social services, you know, doing presentations, and either from clinical lead psychiatrists or to people who work on the ground like me, that they've said, oh, I knew that there was support for the substance misusers. I didn't know there was support for families. I get that once a week, twice a week. There's still this ignorance, you know. I mean, I've got to say, you know, like another gift with gratitude. I mean, I took the job in Turning Point that I've done for 13 years now, like in the area I grew up. And Turning Point, I mean, we're lucky we're in London. And because I've done the job well and I know what I'm doing, you know, they've just backed me. In fact, they've just left me alone because it's almost like he seems to know what he's doing, you know. But I've grown it. You know, I just won an award in the Turning Point, you know, for about a service. And even the manager, he said to me in the big thing, you know, we recognised, you know, as a family service, a drug service, that, you know, we're the best in the country, you know. So, you know, what we offer, and it's just about listening to people. It's that basic. I remember doing good old Sober Dave. I remember doing his podcast. He said, well, how do you work with clients? I said, well, what I do is, it's easy. As a counsellor, I used to read all the books and all that. But if a family member comes in, the easiest thing, so whatever you know, bring, imagine when you just normalise feelings. Why wouldn't you feel like that? You know, because family members are scared of their... Family members come in, I'm really frightened that I'm having this thought that my son is going to die. Why wouldn't you feel like that? Why wouldn't you have that thought? Well, it's normal, yeah. Normalising thoughts and feelings, because every family member has this thought or feeling their loved one is going to die. Why wouldn't you feel like that? Why wouldn't you? The intrusive thoughts, just to normalise it. Really? Yeah. Why wouldn't you? And then to get... My proudest thing I do is I run like a treatment program, like 3 groups a week. They can come in and just like, you know what it's like, just being with other family members. You know, I say to clients when I do assessments, you can come and have one-to-ones with me. You're going to get so much more sitting in a room with other family members, sharing and identifying with them. You know, you're going to get so much more, because it's about taking away the isolation and the shame, isn't it?
I always think that at kind of Nacoa events where you've just got a load of COAs in a room.
It's powerful.
It's really powerful, and there is no shame there. And you can tell, like, we went to an event recently, didn't we? And we stayed in a hotel. And we were all quite merrily the next morning, all sitting around, literally talking about our parents, what actually, you know, kind of their death looked like, and none of them were great. And you can't do that with other people in the same way. And I mean, there were some really unpleasant themes while we were sitting over breakfast. But how amazing when you find that community... You can do that with absolutely no shame, no judgment, no kind of, oh, well, my story's worse, or just an acceptance that they're all...
Yeah.
Everyone just gets it.
But let's put something, we are a tiny percentage of talking about this stuff. You know, it's like people who get into recovery. Or we are tiny, because the majority do not talk about it. It's so shame-based, it's so... It's like I say to clients, you know, what, you want me to come into a room and share all my secrets with a load of strangers? You're mad, aren't you? Yeah. Once they get in there, but so we are the tiny minority, because who wants to talk about, you know, what went on as a child, the trauma, the abuse? Well, you want me to talk about it?
And you, again, like what's happened to you, you're scared to talk about it because you don't... I mean, I'm fortunate that my sisters and my mum are supportive of what I do, but there is an element there where you think, what are other family members going to think? Are they going to stop talking to me? So you don't talk about it because you're afraid of what others are going to say to you.
Back to that fear.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have spoken up about being a COA, and they've either been disowned or absolutely just, what's the word? They've just been vindicated for talking about it. There's a stigma there. There's a shame attached to it.
Well, because lots of people like to kind of shut it in its box when it's over and that's done, and I don't.
But if it was any other physical illness,
Yes.
and this was my point, when people would say, oh, I can't believe you can talk about that. And I would say, but if my dad had a cancer, or my dad had diabetes, or my dad had a stroke, then it would be different. You'd support it. You'd give me empathy. You'd tilt your head to the side and go, oh, I'm really sorry. But as soon as I say he died of alcohol addiction, you just look awkward. You don't know where to look. You don't know what to say. And it's almost change subject as quickly as possible. And because that's the shame and stigma attached to it.
That's what I used to do with my mum, change the subject.
Yeah.
You know, talk about, because I lived in London with my dad, and it was like, especially in the 80s, where's his mum? It's very unusual. He's living, where's his mum? And like, someone said, change the subject, talk about Arsenal. Mind you, that was depressing as well. But but yeah, change the subject quickly, you know. And yeah, so I've kind of like what we first talked about after doing the book, I thought, you know what? I found my voice now. And, you know, I thought, I'll tell you what.
That's really empowering as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you find your voice and you think, God, years of suppression and not being able to talk about it and silence, and all of a sudden you can't stop talking and you'll tell anybody who will listen, I'm a child of an alcoholic and this is how it's affected me.
But equally, there are loads of people that don't find their voice for lots of reasons.
And that's okay.
And that's absolutely okay.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you just have to hope that for those of us who have found them, that it's helpful.
Shine a light.
Yeah. And maybe not even directly, but maybe it does open up those conversations. But for me, not talking about it would have been really detrimental to me. For me, talking about it as much as I have and kind of being as involved with Nacoa as I've become has been the way that I have kind of healed from it as much as, you know, and it's an ongoing process. But the benefits far outweigh the negatives for me.
Oh, I'd be dead if I never spoke. I mean, that's what the back of the book. If I didn't talk about it when I went into rehab, I mean, I spent the month in rehab just sobbing, literally like a baby, sobbing. It was almost like, you know, doing a childhood, coming up, obviously. You know, I was self-medicating by drinking, and I literally sobbed, literally like a baby, you know, and that was the sort of, you know, the end of the road. I had to talk or I was going to die. It literally was, you got to talk, you can't do this anymore. And my girls, you know, I say all the time, if it wasn't for my two girls, I wouldn't be here, because I looked at them, I can't give them what was given me. You know, it was...
You know, talking about having to talk, otherwise you was going to die. I look back at my dad and think he would rather have stayed silent and died than gotten help.
Yeah. Like the majority of alcoholics. You know, I've known a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine, like, who have died from alcoholism. Obviously, I'm in both, you know, camps, and this sort of thing of people I've known, you know, what do you want to do? Do you want to try something different and talk and either get into AA or do whatever you have to do, or carry on drinking and die? Well, carry on drinking and die.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to do that than it is to speak up and ask for help, because the stigma and the shame is just so rife. And so powerful that people would rather not say anything.
Well, and I guess if you stop, I was thinking with my dad, he absolutely, with hindsight, really struggled with mental health, but would not have admitted, generationally, would never have spoken about it or admitted it. But I think the idea of entering recovery and confronting all of that was far scarier than continuing down the road of addiction. But also, it was all he'd known for such a long time that really, where was he going to go? Like, his whole life revolved around this one thing. Like you've said, he sort of protected it so fiercely. And he just wasn't able to do that or to engage with it.
But that, like me, it's that was my medicine. I'd used this medicine, drink and drugs, for 18 years, to self-medicate myself. To
Who
help
are
me.
you without it?
Well, exactly, And literally I was mad with it and mad without it,
It's so misunderstood, addiction. I was saying earlier on that there are more things to be addicted to than substances and alcohol. There's so much more that people can depend on or use to fix, or feel like that's what they're going to use to fix a situation. And I think ultimately it boils down to this, I want to say, inability or shame or whatever it is in us that feels unable to speak up and ask for help and put our hands up or articulate ourselves. Sometimes we just don't know how we're feeling. I know people that behave in an anxious way but don't know they're anxious.
Well,
I've nothing to be anxious
normal.
about. Yeah, it's almost, they've become used to it and they'll say, but I've nothing to be anxious about. I don't know why I'm depressed. I've got nothing to be depressed about. It's almost, people think that you have to have something to be depressed or anxious about and a reason to feel like that, when it could be something so deep rooted, so subconsciously ingrained in us.
Well, it's interesting. So I do this exercise. So, this sort of thing about addiction, drinking, drugs, sex, gambling, it's got nothing to do with that. So there's a thing about like an iceberg, yeah? So you've got the bit above the water, which is the drink or the drugs.
Yeah.
And then you've got the stuff underneath, which is the underlying issues. The underlying issues are the thing that drives the acting out, whatever it is, And the thing is, what happens is if you, when you stop drinking or taking drugs or whatever you're doing, and it's just for the family members as well, whatever because family members are acting out as well, trying to fix the addict.
Yeah.
They're fixing, they're in the cycle of addiction as well. Everyone's playing their game, everyone's got the role. So it's only like when you say, if we talk about family members, that you actually have a look at the underlying issues, And it's like what you said with your dad. He couldn't even like get sober or because the underlying issues are just too painful. And a lot of it's driven from childhood. A lot of it's there. It's deep. And them icebergs, how far do they go down?
Yeah, my dad was, I genuinely believe the way my dad was and the way he was about mental health, he was so stoic and so, he was never going to talk about his trauma. And there was a lot of trauma and it was too painful for him to revisit. And there was a time when I wish he would have done. I really do. I wish he would have been able to. But I genuinely believe that he just weren't going to go there. He weren't going to go there. And I remember when he was on his ventilator and we were there to say goodbye, and I almost felt selfish for asking him to hold on. I was there begging him to hold on and come on, fight this. Then I thought, I feel really selfish for asking you to hold on because I know how much pain you're in. I know how much you've been through, and I know all of your traumas are just so ingrained. And he was never willing to talk about it. He had this stiff, like, upper lip, northern Yorkshire man. Like, he was so caught up in the stigma of mental health and addiction that it was impossible sometimes to even have that conversation with him. Don't know why I just said that.
No,
it's
but
just
it's like
really,
my dad as well.
Yeah.
He couldn't go there. Do you know what I mean? His acting out was violence. He couldn't go there.
But then some people do ask for help, and We don't really have enough time for sort of a huge debate as to the whys and wherefores, but actually there are loads of people trying to access help and support and it's not available because services have been cut. There isn't the funding, there aren't the places.
There's almost an inequality there because unless you can afford £80 a session or a fancy rehab facility, then you're kind of dependent on the NHS and local authority and your area where you live factors into consideration. So there is an inequality there as well with treatment, which is very political. But
there is, yeah, there is. It's sad, isn't it? I mean, even the money, like we're here for the family stuff, all that the forgotten people.
Yeah,
because going back to anyone in this country is entitled to go into, and like someone in addiction can get treatment if they want. You can go to, family members can't. Not how many boroughs are there in London? 32. Not every borough drug service in London has got a family service, or some of them might have. We don't, because I've worked with them for years. Or I'm not going to name and shame anyone, but there's one service, and they're a big service in London. They will not offer treatment to the family member unless the substance misuser is in treatment. The majority of substance misusers are not in treatment with them.
I've heard that.
I mean, there's other stories, but, that's why it's great the work we do at Turning Point, to be fair, or the service, anyone in the past who has been affected by substance misuse, the substance misuser may have passed away, not in their life, as long as they've got a link to the 3 boroughs that I work in and they've been affected historically or now by someone's substance misuse, you're very welcome. Phone me, come and see us, come and join our groups.
And are they funded, or are they free?
Yeah, no, they're free because it's Turning Point. Yeah. So we're the government funding. So anyone, like in this borough, so I work as I said in the introduction, Kensington, Chelsea, Hammersmith and Fulham and Westminster. Yeah, it's free. I think as well, for me, I'm really proud of working, like obviously for Turning Point, because it's all free and it's where I grew up and that, So anyone can come in.
And there's quite a few turning points across the country, isn't there? So if you are listening to this and you do want to join a group that John has suggested, then look up your nearest turning point.
Yeah, turning points around, yeah.
My dad did a detox via Turning Point. Yeah, he did.
How did that work out?
He lasted 16 months, but he didn't follow up with any wellbeing support. And we had the detox because he was physically dependent and he was showing all the physical symptoms. And a doctor sat and told me, under no circumstances are you to let him not drink until he's had this detox. And he had a nurse come out to his house every day for 2 weeks to administer medication, to check in on him. And then he was just kind of left. Well, he wasn't left. He was offered follow-up support, group support, but he never took it because, again, he didn't want to talk. So my dad was never going to talk. He dealt with it physically, then he thought, I can deal with it myself. And it all just became the secret that we just... Yeah. It was almost the elephant in the room. We're not going to talk about it now. Dad's not an alcoholic anymore. I know that's so naive, but we genuinely thought that. And for 16 months, I had my normal dad. I say normal, like, you know what I mean, the sober dad. And there was depression there, you could see it, but he made out that he was managing it. But I had a relationship with my dad in that 16 months, the dad that I remember from being a little girl. And I'll be forever grateful for those 16 months. But as soon as we lost my granddad, his dad, he relapsed. So we lost him in March 2017 and my dad relapsed. And by August 2017, we were turning off his life support machine. But Turning Point did detox him, but he just never followed up the extra services they were offering, which were probably the most important. It's easy. I've spoken to a lot of alcoholics who say to me, stopping drinking is easy with the medication and the support. Stopping drinking is easy. It's maintaining it. That's the hardest.
It's that iceberg, the underlying stuff.
dealing
when
with
you're
it all.
looking what is sort of,
Yeah.
you know, addiction is, you know, it's what goes on up there.
And it's kind of worth saying that not everything works for everybody,
No, it
particularly in
doesn't, yeah.
terms of sort of support for other family members. You've got Nacoa, you've got Al-Anon, you've got Alateen. And actually, just because one thing, you know, I went to an Al-Anon meeting once and I didn't fit in there at all. It didn't work for me at all. And actually, I then didn't access anything ever again until my dad died and I found Nacoa. And actually, what I could have done is I could have said, well, actually, that didn't work for me, but clearly I need help. What can I now try? Because there are services, and yes, you do have to go and look for them. And that might be listening to a podcast. It might be the Nacoa message boards. It might be the telephone helpline. It might be attending an Al-Anon meeting. Not one size fits all, but you can try and help yourself if
I think it's, I mean, I've done all my recovery through, like, personally, AA 12-step, but I've worked in the community for years. I think what's most important, whether it be support groups that I run, is just being with other people. Whether it's Nacoa, it's just sharing your stories. Because addiction, the main thing is about isolation. This is an illness that wants you on your own. It wants you in your head thinking, I'm alone with all of this. No one cares. You know, that place, that shame, no one cares. Who cares about me? And when you're with, whether it's Nacoa, Smart Recovery, Al-Anon, whatever it is, as long as you're sharing and talking to other people. I'm a big thing, you know, with that. It doesn't matter what program, and as long as you're sharing with other people, because this wants you on your own. Family members, it wants you in your head on your own thinking, I'm a piece of shit, I don't deserve all this. I mean, do you know what I mean? It does. That's part of the illness for families and for addiction. 100%. And it, you know, I mean, you know, it wants you on your own. And if you're sharing with other people, it hasn't got you. And even that sort of, I feel crap today, you know, I can go into places and think whether it's they all hate me. Look at them. I don't like them. You know, and that's nothing. People, it's nothing to do with them. It's just my perception.
And sharing breaks down the shame.
100%.
And shame can't survive in silence.
100%. Do you know what I mean?
Well, on that note, thank you for sharing.
No problem. My pleasure.
Thank you, John. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure. Thank you.